All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. Lots going on throughout the rest of this month of May, and then a huge ocean month coming your way in June before we take a little pause for the end of the school year and kick things off again in September for another exciting year of live events for your classrooms. We are continuing a really fun series today called Pioneers of the Possible, where we have teamed up for a live event series with renowned Arctic and Antarctic explorer, climate advocate, and citizen scientist Sunava Sorby. This unique series celebrates extraordinary individuals who are rewriting the rules of what's achievable, breaking boundaries in their respective fields, and driving meaningful change in the world. So over the course of her career, Sunava Sorby has journeyed to some of the most remote and awe-inspiring places on Earth, from the icy expanses of Antarctica to the fragile ecosystems of the Arctic. Along the way, she's been lucky enough to have crossed paths with people redefining what's possible, and she wants to introduce them to you, the classrooms out there. You may recognize Sunava from years of hanging out with us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants with Hearts in the Ice. She was one of the first women to overwinter in the Arctic without men, spending 19 months collecting critical climate data in partnership with organizations like NASA and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So let's get things started. Let's bring Sunava in from backstage right now. Hey, Sunava, how are you?
Hey, Joe. So great to see you always. I'm doing really well, thanks. Sun is shining here on Vancouver Island.
Perfect. Well, it's great to have you with us. It wasn't too long ago that you had your last event with us, but I was away in South Africa while you were hanging out with Rachel, and we were doing a little marine biology exploration. So I hope that went well.
That went really, really well, thanks. And I think you've met Rachel before.
Yep.
I think the last time I saw her was in the Azores for an Explorers Club event, and she is absolutely incredible with the work she's doing to engage her communities, to really empower them, to take care of all the wildlife in our ocean. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't engage communities in protecting their natural spaces, if they don't feel some ownership, if we don't provide exciting careers as well, then conservation doesn't always work. So we need to be building those connections and making everybody feel like they're stakeholders and partners in conservation. So
that's it. And we need people to really understand that they have a critical role to play in this game called life, right?
Yeah. So before we introduce our incredible speaker, where are you coming from today? Where are we grabbing you?
Me?
Yeah.
Where are you grabbing me?
Yeah, usually you're somewhere like around in the US or Iceland, or you're on the move.
I am actually so happy to be home right now. I'm here in Comox on Vancouver Island, and it starts to sound really loud. It's because the snowbirds, there are 9 little planes that are practicing for an air show that's going to happen this weekend. So what a beautiful time to be here. Spring has sprung, and I know that summer is right around the corner.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's get Rebecca in here with us. But before we do that, I think a really cool way to introduce her is through video. We have this great video clip I'm going to play now, and then we'll get Rebecca in live with us. So bear with me while this video kicks in on our screen. And here we go.
Rebecca Rusch is a 7-time world champion in multiple sports and has continually tested her own limits and has shattered the glass ceiling in whatever sport she tackles. Please welcome Rebecca Rusch.
It took me 47 years to figure out why I do what I do. And the reason it took so long is because I was looking in the wrong place.
The world is experiencing mental and physical health epidemics. People are striving to be exceptional and the best versions of themselves, but are lost without a compass or trail map in this totally new terrain. And working harder and longer is not the path forward. We're burning ourselves out and extinguishing our own brilliance. We've lost our ability to navigate life, work, trauma, and relationships. Humans have literally stopped moving and stopped going outside. Our knowledge is expanding while our bodies and brains are being left behind. I'm Rebecca Rusch, 7-time world champion, 2-time cycling Hall of Famer, ultra-endurance athlete, explorer, and your guide and teammate on this adventurous journey. I spent decades honing elite performance, survival, and navigational skills in some of the toughest terrain on Earth. I've learned how to fail.
I just had a huge crash.
Recover from trauma.
This is Dad.
And find my way again and again after being lost. Yes, I'm a world-class athlete and explorer, but I'm also an entrepreneur and trailblazer in the business world.
I'm gonna make it. It's gonna happen.
I've sculpted my ongoing learnings in the wild into tangible trail maps for all who want to achieve peak performance in anything. So how do we find and live up to our true performance potential? Well, the answer is in rewilding, movement, and intentional navigation. That's the key to unlock your true potential and make maximum impact in your life and the lives of others.
So what are you waiting for? Let's team up. The result, maximum vitality, performance, and the satisfaction of knowing where your compass is pointing and how you're gonna get there. The key to unlocking your potential, movement, nature, and an athletic mindset provide the trail map and the tools for you to thrive. I can't wait to start exploring with you.
All right. Well, I think it's about time that we team up with Rebecca. She's a 7-time world champion, Hall of Fame athlete, Emmy Award-winning storyteller, host of the Rusch podcast, and entrepreneur whose career exemplifies resilience, leadership, and the relentless pursuit of peak performance. She's known as the Queen of Pain for her dominance in ultra-endurance sports. She spent over 3 decades redefining what's possible across mountain biking, adventure racing, climbing, and paddling. And her achievements include records at the Leadville 100 MTB, the Iditarod Trail Invitational, summiting Mount Kilimanjaro by bike, and becoming the first person to ride the entire 1,200-mile Ho Chi Minh Trail. Whether competing, speaking, or advocating for mental and physical health, Rebecca's mission is to inspire others to finding meaning, pushing boundaries, and build lives of impact. So let's get Sunva back in here. Let's get Rebecca back in here. Hey, Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so fun to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, it's great to have you with us. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in my home in a place called Smiley Creek, Idaho.
All right. Very cool. Awesome. Well, it's great to have you with us. We've got classrooms tuning in via YouTube. We've got a cool grade 4 classroom hanging backstage. We're going to bring in a little bit later for a little Q&A action, but I think it'll be fun to spend a little bit of time to get to know you first.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. Perfect.
It's so good to see you, Rebecca. I know I shared this earlier, but I haven't seen you in over 30 years. And I feel like where you are right now, from what I read and see in social media, you are like the perfect advocate for what the world's going through right now. You know, there's so much happening in our world where all of this is just completely tilting off its axis, so to speak. So I'm going to dive right in with a couple of questions. And I love this Queen of Pain, you know, that you've been called. It doesn't come without some suffering, obviously. And I just really would love for you to share with people watching and listening right now. What have you learned about your relationship between the suffering and purpose?
I thank you. I love that question. And I will say, I'll just jump back. You are, I think, the first woman I ever met, the first female explorer I ever met in my life. And it was 30 years ago. And I remember you're going to Antarctica, you're doing all this stuff. And I was just like, wow, this woman is so inspiring. And so I have to thank you. It's great to reconnect again, because I remember meeting you and just being so blown away by your curiosity and your energy. And so anyway, it's really exciting
to at you. Thank you.
So Queen of Pain, yeah, that's a nickname that was given to me a long time ago, and mostly it was given to me in the media. It was a cover of a magazine, and then it just sort of stuck, and it was really referring to, you know, some people misinterpret Queen of Pain, and they're like, oh, you do all this long, hard stuff. Why do you want to hurt yourself? And it's not really that. I think of it as, you know, pain is sort of gets a bad rap where people think about, oh, well, I don't want to hurt. But if you think about the hard things and the challenges that you've done in your life, I look at pain or really challenge as a portal. And athletes often talk about the pain cave of like, I'm going into the pain cave, mentally, physically, where you're in a really hard place. I think of it through my athletic experience of pain as a tunnel. And, you know, when I'm riding in Alaska or doing the Ho Chi Minh Trail or doing something really hard, you don't go in and come out the same way as you would a cave. You're actually going through and you're pushing forward because there isn't a choice to turn back. Sometimes in these really committing environments like you spend time in, you've got to go forward. There's kind of no giving up. And on the other side of that really hard work, that really big challenge, you go through the tunnel and you come out different. You come out stronger, you come out more resilient, you maybe come out surprised at what you were able to do that seemed impossible. And so I think of pain in that way of the relationship is not that I want to hurt myself, it's that I want to grow. And if we're sitting on the couch doing something super easy, you know, that's great to have rest days and do those things. But if you're not pushing beyond your boundaries or pushing into unknown territory, you're not growing as much as you might possibly be able to. And so when you ask about sort of pain and purpose, initially I thought I was doing all these sports to win medals and win world championships and check off, you know, do something nobody's ever done before. But in the process, I started learning that the journey of those explorations of going around the world and meeting new people and seeing what I was physically capable of doing, I started to learn that the purpose wasn't to win a medal. The purpose was really my own growth, that I was getting stronger and I was learning and I was becoming just a better version of myself. And so the purpose, I've realized looking backwards, the purpose wasn't the medals, but as a professional athlete, often it's like, you know, you need to win first place or you're grasping for that. And those goals are awesome, but they're not the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is your own growth. And then ultimately is to bring other people along for the ride and let them experience their own pain tunnel and what light and change they're going to see on the other side of it.
Wow, that is very very deep and profound. And the visual I have is just sort of like stripping the layers of who we think we are to become kind of who we're meant to be, you know? And I think so many people avoid painful circumstances. And yet that's probably the biggest gift is the growth, you know? You are absolutely remarkable. I watched Blood Road, which was really an emotional story. I encourage everybody to watch that. And that was very, very moving and a very personal story for you. And I'm wondering, as you were on that journey, riding the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was it 1,200 miles or, yeah. Did that reshape your sense of legacy, both for yourself and also for your father and healing and home? I mean, that's a loaded question right there, but could you talk a little bit about that story and how that maybe reshaped your sense of place?
Yeah, and I'll give a little background for everyone watching. Blood Road is is a ride that I did. It's a film, an Emmy Award-winning documentary film that you can watch. And after this, hopefully you'll watch it. But it was a bike expedition, the most important expedition of my life. And that was 10 years ago, I did that ride. And 2 years later, the film came out. So it was a storytelling journey. But the ultimate goal, the reason I wanted to go is I wanted to go do a big adventure that no one had ever done, and use my skill as a navigator and an athlete with the goal to go be the first person to ride the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And there's a lot of history and legacy in that. But the reason I wanted to ride that trail was that my dad was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam-American conflict. And he was shot down when I was 3 years old in 1972. And he never came home. And there's always been this map coordinate that we had, and a lot of questions for me as a young kid and even as an adult of like, what happened to him. And I'm also a historian. I wanted to know more about the Vietnam-American conflict. And so I designed an expedition, 1,200 miles, to put together as historically accurate route as I could through the jungles of Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, like crazy month on the trail jungle experience, but to go to those map coordinates where my dad died and just kind of see what I would find there. And we made a film about it, and really your question, it very much shifted my purpose in doing these big explorations, because all of a sudden it was not just an external exploration of like riding through the jungle. It was a really interpersonal exploration of like, who was my dad? How did I feel about this? We never talked about it as a kid. I never knew the history. And I had to, because we were doing a film, I had to do interviews every day about how I was feeling and like journal, and then give my journal entries over to the creative director. And so I had to really dig inside myself, which was something I wasn't used to. And so it was a big internal exploration and excavation of like, how do I feel? And I rode with a Vietnamese woman as my teammate. And really, I got to the place where my dad died. I got to connect with him, and a lot of people said, oh, it must have been great closure. And it was exactly the opposite. It was an opening for me of learning who my dad was, seeing the place that he was in, understanding the conflict of the war, and reading his letters, and also discovering the current events going on there. And that was the bombs that were dropped 50 years ago. Some of the unexploded ordnance are still killing people from a war that ended 50 years ago. And I had no idea. And I felt so strongly that my experience, my career for 30 years, and my dad drew me there so that he could show me that and basically ask me to help clean up the bombs. And I founded the Be Good Foundation in his name, and we use bikes to kind of change the world, including cleaning up unexploded ordnance in Laos. And so it was a real connection to my family and myself and my mom and my sister, but also to cultures there. And like seeing that, for one example, is, we call it the Vietnam War. They call it the American War. And, so my perception really changed of my family, of the war, and the power of us connecting and being together. So it was a really powerful ride, and it has shifted. I still do explorations, I still do adventures, but they all have now an aspect, I feel like my dad asked me to be good. That was how he signed all of his letters home. And so yeah, that has shifted a lot of my purpose to get more people riding. Bikes really heal, the outdoor and adventure and nature has been healing for me, and I know healing for you. And so that's a lot of my work now is getting more people outside to heal and grow and connect.
Oh, wow. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm hoping to bring the movie and screen it here on the island.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely. So thank you, Rebecca.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much. I think that we should very shortly bring some more voices into the conversation, bring in some classrooms and see what they're thinking. So if you are tuning in via YouTube, don't be shy. Use the chat sidebar, send us in some questions. I do want to maybe touch on one more thing before we open things wide up, and that is kind of thinking about being in the classroom and overcoming challenges. And so I know in your work, you talk about an athlete's mindset, but you also say it can apply beyond sport. So how could students apply that mindset maybe outside of sport and in the classroom?
Yeah, I love that you asked that. So I have this little sort of concept that I've coined, and I call it the athlete operating system. And so as an athlete, the structure of achieving a goal is there are a lot of aspects. You get a coach, you have teammates, you have a plan, you have a training schedule that includes some hard days, some easy days. You go back and evaluate when you didn't achieve a goal. And so there's evaluation and development of skill. And so I've honed that over years of being an athlete, but recently it's sort of occurred to me as I shift my business is that kind of structure that works for high performance on an athletic level is the same kind of structure that works in school, that works in business. And it's basically putting a structure forth to achieve a goal. And so if we take that to the classroom, you can think about, you've got a big report due, at the end of the season. Well, it seems like this big elephant that's too hard to tackle. So if you take the athlete operating system, you go back and you go, okay, let's set up a schedule, this week I need to do this, next week I need to do that. And also I think a really important part is setting up the structure. As an athlete, you don't go hard every single day. You have to take what's called periodization. So some days are harder, some days are rest days, because on rest days, you actually let your body get stronger. It's a concept that people don't often realize. You think you're getting stronger when you're doing the hard work, but you're also getting stronger when you do the rest work. And so in everyday life, that might mean prioritizing your sleep, or prioritizing, if you're really stuck on a project, walking away from it for a minute to let your brain rest and go outside. So I really like the model of the athlete operating system, and people seem to resonate with it. So if you're in sports, if anyone listening, plays soccer or plays tennis, you can kind of think of, how does your coach structure your training for the day, the week, the year to move towards a big goal. And it really does fit pretty nicely. So I'm curious if anyone in the audience here, if you're in sports, and I will add, the one last thing I'll add is that no matter what sport you're in, for the athlete operating system, there's always a team involved. There are always coaches. There are also teammates that you're going to ask for help. And even as an individual athlete, I have a lot of teammates that are helping me, whether it's a coach, or whether it's somebody who lifts me up when I'm feeling down, maybe kind of a motivational coach, or even my sister. Sometimes I call my sister when I'm struggling with something. So teammates show up in a lot of different formats. It's not necessarily only your coach who is part of your team. You're part of other people's teams. You may not even know that. So I'd love to know how that maybe resonates with some of the athletes in the room who play sport, and if you can think of how you might apply that to some of your challenges in the classroom.
All right. Well, let's find out what kind of athletes we have hanging out with us right now. Okay. I'm going to we've got some fourth graders in Alberta hanging out with us. So I'm going to pop them up here on the screen. Hey, fourth graders, how are ya? There they are.
There we go. I had to unmute. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Good. So before we get some questions, I want to see out there, how many out there play sports? Let me see some hands for our sports players.
Yay.
Yeah, very cool. How about some soccer players? Any soccer players out there? Hockey? There must be some hockey players in Alberta. Yeah, there's some hockey players. Very cool. What about something like swimming? Yeah, cool. All right. Well, our Cougar Cubs hanging out with us. Do you have some questions for us today?
Okay, Eden, come up and bring your question up. Yep, come up to the front so she can see you. Okay.
I have two questions. Who made your nickname the Queen of Pain, and have you got any world records?
That is a great question. Thank you for that question. The Queen of Pain nickname came from a magazine that they put me on the cover. It was the first time I'd been on a sports magazine, and the whole title was the Queen of Pain. I was like, what? What does that mean? And then I read the article, and it was talking about how I don't quit. I was the captain of my adventure racing team that was all male except for me. And so it was a compliment of the fact that I can do hard things and I don't quit. And it just sort of stuck. But I will say I'm shifting it a little bit to as I reframe my relationship with sports as maybe it should be the queen of play, because I feel like it's really important in sports that we aren't always so serious, that we're actually having fun. And as a competitive athlete, sometimes I got real serious. And so I'm returning to queen of pain, but also queen of play, because I believe challenge is really important, but also having fun. So great question. And then the other question, do I have any world championship titles? Yeah, I have 7 world championship titles in different sports, 3 times 24-hour mountain bike world champion. And that means racing 24 hours nonstop on like a 20-kilometer course around and around and around and around without stopping, without sleeping. So that's kind of crazy to go all night, and whoever does the most distance in 24 hours wins. So 3 world championships in that, also in whitewater rafting and adventure racing, which is like a week long, and where you navigate, you ride horses, you paddle, you do all the sports. You are on foot, you're on bike. And then I also have a masters cross-country skiing world championship, which was kind of crazy. So I've done a lot of different sports. And so I think that the key thing there is that it's really great. Like cycling's my main sport now, but I think it's really important to do a lot of different things and try a lot of different things, because 1, it will support the main sport that you're doing. And 2, it's just fun to go exploring. And people ask me, why do you like the bike so much right now? I used to hate the bike. Used to be my worst event. And I didn't like cycling because I wasn't any good at it. But then I started working harder at it. And now it's my main sport. I still ski and run and paddle. But what I like about the bike is I can go farther and I can see more things and I can go more distance on the bike. But I still do all the other stuff.
Very cool.
That was a long answer.
Which sport that you do is your favorite?
That's hard. I would say, well, I started with running. That was my first. And then rock climbing was really important to me. But I would say, like I talked about, I think cycling is my favorite right now because it's such a good way to travel and see places. Like I just got back from Italy. I was on vacation with my husband and we rented bikes. And we just were able to like go to all these castles and go to all these places further and without getting in a car and further than we could go, then we could go walking. So I think the bike is my favorite right now.
Very cool.
There you go.
Why won't you go to space?
Why won't I go to space? Well, I've never been invited to go to space. So there's that. I don't have a spaceship. So there's that. And also, I think Earth is the most amazing place. There is so much to explore and do here that it's such a beautiful place. So I love being here on Earth. And so I still have more to explore here.
All right. I'm going to put our 4th graders backstage temporarily. I will come back for a few more questions shortly, but I do want to dip into YouTube and grab some questions from there. And we have Miss Coburn's crew in Hamilton, Ontario with us. And they were reading your bio and they're exhausted. So they want to know, how do you relax and regenerate? And Sunava, maybe you can touch on this as well from, when you're out in those polar regions and exploring, how do you relax and regenerate as well? And I think Rebecca had to grab something. So maybe Sunava, you should start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting and Rebecca touched on this early on. Routine, and structure is something that makes it possible to get from point A to point B when you're on an expedition. And I actually relax that way too. I try to step it down, but take a routine back at home. So yoga is always part of that. Working out, getting out and getting outside, going for hikes or walks. That's relaxing for me. And just hanging out with people that I care about. That I find that really relaxing and a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I think we're in the same path. I walk my dogs, and that's always really fun and relaxing for me because I get to be outside with them, but like watch them play and play stick. And so there's this energy with the dogs, but I'm just out walking around. So, and they've been really important. I had a concussion a few years ago, and I wasn't able to do my sport and be as active as I wanted to be. And it was really important for me to just get outside and walk the dogs. That was a really important part of my recovery. So yeah, I love walking my dogs. I love gardening. We've got a little tiny garden, and something about putting my hands in the dirt, playing in the dirt reminds me of when I was a kid. So those are two things. But also, as Sunniva mentioned, I've learned to spend time journaling and meditating. That is since Blood Road, 10 years ago, when I had to write down all my thoughts every day on that ride, that has sort of carried with me. And that's been a nice exercise to sort of, one, get out some feelings. And also it's like a conversation with yourself. People are like, well, why do you journal? Why do you need to write it down? It sort of feels like a conversation. And so I do those things to relax, but I also love cooking. I just got back from Italy and did a cooking class. So I made some pasta last night by hand. So that was kind of fun. So a lot of those things. And I think it's very similar to Sunniva.
All right. Okay, so I've got two kind of cool questions here from the chat, and then we'll check in with our fourth graders again. The first one is from a group in BC, and they're wondering, what's the most challenging thing when you start a cycle in a new country?
So yeah, travel to a new place and a new country is actually really cool because it's such a way to see another culture and sort of expand your mindset. And riding in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia was a really good example of that, where I didn't know anything about the culture. And I rode with a Vietnamese woman who was kind of telling me, well, this is how they harvest rice. And her dad served in the war on the other side, from mine. And so it was when I go to a new country, I really like to try to learn from the people there, because I'm a visitor and I don't know how, even like sometimes they drive on the different side of the road, or they take their shoes off when, you come into a house. Or so I try to like first watch and observe and sort of see how people are doing things there, even the way you eat or the way you might go to the bathroom, or, so I think being curious and asking other people like, hey, I'm new here. How does it work? There's nothing, I think that's pretty great to say, hey, show me around. So when I get to a new place, I really like leaning on the people there to sort of take my hand and show me around and show me what it's like there.
Great. So sports can have location barriers sometimes. Sometimes they can have cost barriers. So were there any barriers that you've had to overcome along the way with the sports that you've been a part of?
I mean, lots of barriers in making sport my career. I could have chosen, I will say, if money were the objective, I would have chosen a different career, because being an entrepreneur, being your own businesswoman, and sort of choosing a path less traveled, is harder financially, but it has been so much more rewarding in travel and experience and growth in that way. So early on, there were definitely some challenges. Like I lived out of my car for a while. When I first met Sunniva, I lived out of this orange Bronco that I'd rebuilt. And I was traveling all around and going places, and the only way I could afford to do it was if I didn't have rent for an apartment. And so I made that sacrifice. But what I got to do is go stay with a bunch of friends all over the place. And, sometimes I'd sleep in my car, but a lot of times I was just going places and camping or staying with other people. And so while that seemed like a sacrifice, it actually was pretty cool. So I think early on, that was one of the biggest barriers, is like, how am I going to get to do this passionate thing I want to do sports and explore, but I don't have a lot of money. Like, how am I going to make it work? And I made it work by not living anywhere for a while. And I always said, when I have a garage, and then I'll know I really made it. Like, that was my big goal in life, was to like live somewhere and have a home base. And I was able to do that finally, not until my, late 30s, where I settled down in Idaho. But it took a while, but I got to travel all over the place. So that was probably the biggest barrier early on, was figuring out how to do what I wanted to do.
Okay. Well, I'm going to check in with our fourth graders. Alexis, I see your question in the chat. It's a really good one. I'm going to save that one till the end. So I haven't forgotten about you, Alexis, in the chat. We will be back. Fourth graders, do you have another question or two for Rebecca?
Would you live in a treehouse in a forest?
Yes. Would you? Would you?
Why? Because I have a TV.
I would too.
I would too. Oh, I mean, being immersed in nature is why I live in Idaho, because I love being surrounded by nature. And so, yes, I would live in a treehouse. You could just be with the birds and smell the trees and be in the wind and be fully immersed in nature all the time. Would be amazing. What a good question.
Big gift.
My question is, have you ever done any Olympic things?
I have not done any Olympic things. So the sports that I've done have never been in the Olympics. Mountain biking is now, but it wasn't until kind of fairly recently. And the type of sports that I do that are ultra long distance, kind of like Sunniva, those aren't really in the Olympics, because it would take too long to show them on TV.
All
Good
right.
question. Thank you.
Some great questions from our grade fours. Maybe we can squeeze one more in, if there's one more out there.
Got one more here.
Perfect.
Why would you want to be called the Queen of Pain?
Well, I didn't choose it as a nickname, but it is a compliment, because it reflects me doing hard things and not quitting and trying. But like I said earlier, I'm maybe shifting that, maybe a little rebrand to Queen of Play.
I love that.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, fourth graders. You had really great questions today. Thanks for hanging out with us all the way from Alberta. Very cool. Thanks, gang. All right. Let's dip back into the chat, because there's some cool questions here. We'll do this first one, and then I really want to get to Alexis's question, because it's a really good one. We have someone curious about, how diet plays a role in your daily life. Is there anything you do each day, or something that you try and do just to, that maybe keeps you feeling good physically, maybe mentally as well?
Yeah, that is a super good question. And because what we put into our bodies, that's our fuel. And so even if you're not doing a big sporting event that day, what you put in, I like to say garbage in, garbage out, or good stuff in, good stuff out. And so your food is your energy. And I've, you learn that in sports, but I also think it's important in every day. So just a few things I do. I always have protein first thing in the morning, like a little protein shake, and put some fruits in there and some yogurt. So I always try to start off the day with a good bit of nutrition, because sometimes you get busy and then the rest of the day you might not realize you missed lunch. So I always start with a good shake that's got a lot of fruit and protein in it in the morning. So that's kind of a standby. And then something I have to work on is really trying to make sure I drink water all day long, because I could go all day and not drink any water, especially if I'm doing sports. It's easy because you're thirsty. So I set up a big sippy cup in the morning and I make sure I fill it up at least once. There you go. So, and I'm kind of measuring it. Yeah, because it's real. Water is, is so critical to like keeping everything in your body moving. So a little shake in the morning and then drinking water throughout the day.
All right. Good advice to keep that body and that brain functioning, because you need that brain power when you're in the classroom too.
I'm curious, Rebecca, has that changed for you over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was younger, I definitely sort of had this mentality that like, I'm doing so much activity, I can eat whatever I want and it doesn't matter. And I could it's not like I would get heavy, but I wasn't putting good fuel in. So like eating pizza or, gummy bears, would do that a lot in early years of my sport. Cause I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm doing so much exercise. But now I know that like what you're feeding your cells, and, I could have even had more energy in my younger years if I was eating a little bit better. And so that has changed, and I've learned, and especially as I get older, but you don't think when you're young, you're like, oh, I can just do whatever. But yeah, I find people are more educated though now. Even young people are more educated about nutrition. So it has changed, it has shifted, and that's the good news is you can always change your habits and improve them.
All right. So I'm going to share some links in a minute. I'll share a link to Rebecca's website. Sunava, our class in Hamilton's wondering, what about for you? Where could students follow along if they want to know more about what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you. You could go to my website. It's just sunavasorby.com. I'm doing a lot of work here on home soil across Canada right now. And I'll do some things in the Arctic and the Antarctic in the coming years, mostly ship-based work. But I'm really trying to get out and encourage people to get outside and engage and protect the very things that we're at the risk and the brink of losing. So it's never too late.
All right. So I'm going to put those up there in banners. So if you want to follow along with Rebecca, and the upcoming stages of her journey, as well as Sunava as well. I've got her website here. You can check those out. Really, if you search their names online, they're going to pop up right away. You can find Rebecca and Sunava pretty easily. And so this question I've been alluding to, which I think is a really great question that Alexis has asked online, and you could both take a crack at it if you like, it is that if you could go back and give your younger self some advice that students could use too, what might it be?
You want to go first?
Sure. I would say don't take yourself so seriously. I think we have this image of ourselves, and it's very early on. It could be ego driven, that it's about achieving something or getting to the end of something. And that's really never the case. I think the case is, and we've heard it a lot, but unless you experience it, you can't have a connection to it, that it really is about the journey. And it's, I would say, enjoying every step of the way, even if you do have a destination that you want to get to. Because that gives us the opportunity to strip the layers and go through the painful periods, whether they're up here or they're in here, and understand that the biggest gift is the one that's inside, that's kind of waiting to be discovered through the process of just kind of letting go and having fun.
I love that. I guess on similar lines, I would tell myself that there's no such thing as perfect. It doesn't exist. There's no reason to strive for it because it actually just doesn't exist. And in my sports, if we go back to the athlete operating system, I'd be assigned like all these workouts for the week. And I never got 100% of the workout done 100% of the time. And so I had this 80% rule that if I get 80% of the workout done 100% of the time, I still won world championships that way. And it's, good is good enough. And I learned that in sport, but it took me a while to learn that. And so perfect doesn't exist. And the 80% rule goes a long way. So if you can do stuff 80%, but show up 100% of the time, that's what winning looks like.
Love that.
All right. Absolutely great advice. It's been a really fun session. These always go so fast. We seem to get started, the countdown, and then we're off, and we're wrapping up before we know it. It really is a treat to be able to connect this way with some of the really amazing people you've met from around the world, like Rebecca. Such a cool story, going from kind of living in your car and aspiring for a garage to world championships and starting your own foundation. Really exciting stuff. And I think it's just, that power of having goals and knowing where you want to be and chasing your passion. And I think that can lead students and really anybody to so many good places.
And what's so fascinating about Rebecca is, and she alluded to it earlier, but it's, if money is your objective, the ladder is usually leaning against the wrong wall, if you know what I mean. And you've always been, driven by your passion and your heart. And you haven't changed in that way. You've just added a lot of things to the story. And that's absolutely just beautiful. And the Be Good Foundation, we didn't tap into that, but I'd love for people to check out the Be Good Foundation as well, because that's a huge part of your story.
Well, I feel the same. I'll reflect that back. I have so much respect for you as a mentor and a peer, and it's been really important for me to see female explorers like you setting an example for life. Yeah, and the work that you're doing as well. So I feel the same kind of admiration.
So let's all get out on our bikes today.
Perfect. Sounds good. I wanted to give a huge shout out to our classrooms, our group in Alberta with all those great questions. Are still hiding back there, so maybe I should bring them in one more time. There they are. Thanks, gang. Thanks for all those awesome questions.
Hi, you guys.
Shout out to all of our students who joined us live. Well, very cool. And Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure to get to meet you virtually. And I'm excited to follow along and see where the Be Good Foundation goes next, and what the Queen of Play gets up to in her next activities.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And thanks to all the students that showed up here today. I really enjoyed that.
All right.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much, everyone. We're going to sign off for today.